Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation online worship service. The OUUC community comes together in the mutual promises and possibilities of our covenant. We commit to live out our mission to be a liberal religious community that opens minds, fills hearts, and transforms lives. We are so glad that you are here today. My name is Mary Ann Thompson, and I'm a member of the worship arts team. And leading worship with me today is our guest speaker, Jennifer Springsteen. Jennifer is a low residency seminary student at Star King School for the Ministry in Berkeley. She is the co-founder of the PDX Writers, and her writing has won several awards, including Regional Arts and Culture Council grants, an Oregon Literary Art Fellowship, and 2 Pushcart Prize nominations. She is represented by Joanna McKenzie of Nielsen Literary Agency. She writes, and she teaches, and she studies in Portland, Oregon, and I am pleased and honored that Jennifer could join us for worship this morning. Thank you, Jennifer. We are blessed to have our music director, Troy Fisher, and Sarah Lewis, our Director of Religious Education, with us this morning. We give thanks, boy do we ever, to the tech team for providing technical support today, and thanks to Darlene Sarkala, our administrator, for keeping us informed and connected. And we are grateful for the many hands that have helped to make worship happen this morning. We welcome each of you to this celebration of love and wonder and to this congregation. After the service, we invite you to stay online for a virtual coffee hour. This is a chance to gather with a small group to say hello and check in. We'll offer more information at the end of the service. And I want to draw your attention to the printed order of service, which includes our announcements, and it's available on the website. There are many opportunities to stay connected to our community because social distancing does not mean social isolation. Please check the website regularly. If you have questions or need help, please check in with the staff member. Now, let us open our hearts and our minds as we prepare for worship. Welcome, everyone. It is good to be together.
Hi. Thanks for having me here this morning. I do want to say that before we shut down, I had the opportunity to visit the beautiful church in Olympia. I was so happy to be there, and I'm sure you're going to be happy to go back soon. So this morning and every Sunday morning, we join the Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world, lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. If you have a chalice at home, please ready yours now. I'd like to share with you the Star King School for the Ministry's chalice lighting words. With the kindling of this flame, we reaffirm our commitment to accept life's gifts with grace and gratitude, and to use them to bless the world in the spirit of love. Our opening words this morning come from the Italian mystic and poet Kabir Das and translated by Robert Bly. The flute of interior time is played whether we hear it or not. What we mean by love is the sound coming in. When love hits the farthest edge of excess, it reaches a wisdom. And the fragrance of that knowledge, it penetrates our thick bodies. It goes through walls. Its network of notes has a structure as if a million suns were arranged inside. This tune has truth in it. Where else have you heard a sound like this? Come and let us worship together.
Let's sing together our opening hymn. It's hymn number 30 out of the Gray Hymnal, Over My Head. Over my head, I hear hear music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air over my head. I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere over my head. I hear singing in the air over my head. I hear singing in the air all over my head. I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere over my head. I see trouble in the air over my head. I see trouble in the air over my head. I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere over my head. I feel gladness in the air over my head. I feel gladness in the air over my head. I feel gladness in the air. There must be a God somewhere over my head. I see angels in the air over my head. I see angels in the air over my head. I see angels in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Thank you for singing.
Good morning. Our story today is a true story recorded by Jessica York. And it reminds us that you do not have to be rich or famous or even an adult to make a difference in the world. You do not need to have a special training or be the ruler of a country. Many people who feel passionately about injustice in the world speak up about it. Speaking up can take many forms because people have different ways of expressing themselves. And here is one example. In 1992, the country of Bosnia-Herzegovina was involved in a civil war. In a civil war, different groups within one country fight against each other for control. And war always affects not just the soldiers, but everyday people too. And this war was no different. One day at 10 a.m., a bomb exploded in the city of Sarajevo and killed 22 everyday people just like you and me who were waiting in line to buy bread. Near the bakery lived someone who had bought their bread at that same bakery. They were terribly distraught at the violent acts being committed in their hometown, and they decided to speak up. The day after the bombing, they entered the square where the bomb had exploded, sat down, and began to play the cello. You see, this person was a cellist with the opera orchestra in Sarajevo. Music held a special place for them, and it was through their music that they chose to speak to anyone who would listen about what had happened in that bakery line. For the next 22 days, one day for each person who had died, the cellist came to the square and played the same piece of music. They called this music a daily musical prayer for peace. When they spoke up with their cello, people listened. One person who heard was Bailey's brother, a performance artist in Seattle. She arranged for a performance of 22 cellists to play at 22 different public places for 22 days. This performance echoed the musical prayer from Sarajevo and was Miss Brother's way of speaking up. Both of these acts came to the attention of a young boy in Indiana. He started a campaign to let other people know about the cellists' performances. The boy thought it was important for people to know that none of us who call for peace and reconciliation are truly alone. The boy, Jason Crow, wrote about these acts of inspiration in a newspaper that he published called The Informer. He also started a fundraising project called The Cello Cries On to raise money to build a statue for the city of Sarajevo to be placed on the site of the bakery. It is called the Children's International Peace and Harmony Statue. The statue would not only honor those who had died, it would also remind everyone of the high price too many people pay in war. Someone, in a terrible act of violence, took the lives of 22 people in Sarajevo. No one remembers this person's name, but the people who reacted to that violence, not with more violence, but in a universal call for peace and reconciliation, we do remember. We honor them by passing on their story, and when you tell their story, you are speaking up for peace too. We came into community this morning, bringing all that is in our lives. In this space, we draw on our community of harmony to hold all that we bring here with us. We take the time now to share some of the joys and sorrows that have been offered. If you would like to send in a joy or sorrow for next week, please look for the link in the online worship page on the OUC website, and we'll bring it into the service next week. Right now, I invite you all to take a deep breath together as we open our hearts to receive all that is in our community today. I invite you to enter your sorrows in the chat box on your screen. We'll do the joys in a moment. Let's hold the sorrows first. As we take in what is posted, let us reach out our hearts in love and care for all those who share. I place a stone in the water for all the sorrows shared. Now invite you to share your joys in the chat. I place a stone in the water for all these joys shared here today. And one final stone for all the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that remain unspoken.
Thank you all. The poem that I'll share today is called Some Call It God by Jabari Yassin. I choose rhythm. The beginning is motion, black funk shaping itself in time before time, dark, glorious, nimble as sperm, sparkling its way into the greatest of grooves, conjuring worlds from dust and storm and primordial soup. I accept funk as my holy savior. Funk so high you can't get over it, so wide you can't get around it. Ubiquitous funk that envelops all creatures great and small, quickens nerve endings and the white hot hearts of stars. I believe in rhythm, rippling each feather on a sparrow's back and glittering in each grain of sand. I am faithful to funk as irresistible twitch, heart skip, and backbone flip, the whole funk and nothing but the funk, sliding electrically into exuberant noise. I hear the cosmos swinging in the startled whines of newborns, the husky blare of tenor horns, lambs bleating, and lions roaring, a fanfare of tambourines and glory. This is what I know. Rhythm resounds as a blessing of the body, the wonder and hurt of being, the wet delight of a tongue on a thigh, fear itching icily along a spine, the sudden surge, urge to holler, the twinge that tells your knees it's going to rain, the throb of centuries behind and before us. I embrace rhythm as color and chorus, the bright orange of connection, the mahogany lure of succulent loins, the black and tan rhapsody of our clasping hands. I whirl to the beat of the omnipotent hum, diastole, systole, automatic, borderless, bigger and bigger still, bigger than love, bigger than desire and adoration, bigger and begging and contemplation, bigger than wailing and chanting in the slit throats of roosters, for which praise is useless, for which gratitude might as well be whispered. For motion is meaning enough. Funk lives in us, begetting light as bright as music, unfolding into dear, lovely day and bushes ablaze in rhythm until it begins again. So ends our reading. I invite you now into a time of reflection, prayer, and meditation. Let us hold a moment of silence together.
Let's sing together, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in my hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
our prayers and meditations deepen our gratitude for what we know as sacred in our lives and in this world. Each Sunday, we express our gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. The offering collected here will be used to support the continued good works of OUUC and shared with the local organizations serving society's well-being in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist principles. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is the Olympia School District Education Foundation Principals Emergency Fund. Congressman Denny Heck and other outstanding community members launched the Principals Emergency Fund in 2008 in response to the unmet basic needs of students and their families. In the year 2018 and 19, nearly 1/4 of OSD, Olympia School District students, were living in poverty. Close to 300 students were homeless. The fund provides each school in the district with resources that allow principals and teachers to help remove common barriers and maximize students' potentials. The funds have supported clothing and hearing aids, glasses, housing, transportation, food, school supplies, fees for school activities, and much, much more, transforming students' lives and allowing them to thrive. Please note that you can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or by texting the number that will magically appear on your screen in just a moment. You can also mail a check to OUUC. Our community partners continue to need our financial support now more than ever. May the offering now be generously given, as it is gratefully received.
Wonderful. Thank you. A short reading from Sonia Sanchez. Let there be everywhere our voices, our eyes, our thoughts, our love, our actions, breathing hope and victory. Thank you for your generous gifts. Music has always pulled at me, my heart like a quivering compass needle, angling to some divine truth. Music doesn't stay only in the head. It ruptures through instruments, haunts the air. It vibrates our skin, our largest organ. Music muscles its way into our muscles, causing lightness and lift, including and most especially the beating of our heart. Music is the worship with the bells of notes of tambourines. I want to feel God through the piano, peeling out of the hammer and pins into the delicate petals of my own ears. I want it to drum inside my heart, shake me to the core. I want that emotion to rock me. I know I'm not alone in this. When asked to speak to his poem, Asim wrote, "In working toward a constructive disruption of my idea of the divine, I'm embracing the notion of God as funk, an irresistible impulse to drop everything and move." Asim says, "I can think of few experiences holier than responding to rhythm, whether it's coming from the beat of a drum or a church matron humming her favorite hymn." Did you know that UUs are included with Protestants in the unkind name-calling of God's frozen people? Ouch. Perhaps it's our Puritan roots. There was indeed a 1644 ordinance against organs and elaborate music in churches because they were disliked by the Puritans. So perhaps that accounts for our seeming stiffness. Now, I don't think we need to become ecstatic dancers as we sing, "You got to do when the Spirit says do," right? But you've got to sing and dance when the Spirit says to sing and dance. Spirit sometimes bypasses our big brains and heads right to our throat and our hips. Let our bodies pay attention for a change. I'm not sure if you felt this way, but for me, when the orders came to shelter in place, it felt as if a great silence fell over the world, a silence like a blanket of snow, both mysterious and stifling like snow, hallowed. And like after a fresh snow, we looked out our windows and contemplated our existence in this new quiet. Choirs stopped singing, bands stopped playing, concerts were canceled. We stilled, we breathed deeply. We listened to the music that we often overlook. Bird song, the leg song of crickets, wind rubbing tree branches. Eventually, human voices found a way to re-enter. Voices learned to harmonize through the internet cables. YouTube and Zoom and FaceTime lit up with musicians playing for one another, for us. And after the killing of George Floyd, when so many people could no longer stay quiet about systemic racism and a culture of white supremacy, artists used their craft to shape the protest. Lil Baby's The Bigger Picture, Leon Bridges' Sweeter, New York Philharmonic clarinist Anthony McGill played a discordant America the Beautiful. Have you seen this? He leaves the last note hanging, haunting, the story of America incomplete. And then he puts his hands behind his back, bends to both knees and bows, inviting other musicians to do the same. McGill says, it's a sign of prayer, of vulnerability, of peaceful protest. In a way, it's a sign of surrender to this situation that we're in, that we're on our knees and we're praying for people to pay attention to this. There is an intentionality to the interpretation of music, and that intentionality is inspirational. Music connects us to stories of our time and to the stories of our ancestors. My Appalachian ancestors are a proud, yodeling, calling out, guffawing, old-time preaching, praying, shouting, singing bunch. That's a lyric from Ader Pace's Old Camp Meeting Days, one of his 4,000 Southern gospel songs. It's the Spirit speaking to him through the music. My favorite version is the one sung by Doc Watson. And I love the Trinity-filled verses of Walking Through Jerusalem, just like John, most wonderfully crooned by Bill Monroe. Of course, both these songs appeared in hymns long before I heard them at concerts in my own living room, picked by the seldom seen or our Virginia locals, the Bluegrass Butchers. Those were 4 musical surgeons. On a trip to Tennessee in the early 90s, I dug around the library at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and found so many of the old recordings of gospel. I remember sitting at the small table with borrowed headphones, my chest swelling, feet jumping, tears streaming my cheeks. I hadn't considered myself a Christian for quite a while then, but I figured if anybody might, it'd be those crooning folks who'd lure me back with a fiddle, with a 3-string banjo, the yip and whine of their aching voices. Divining rods, my ancestors are. And the experience of music in the Black Baptist churches I've attended is physical, ritual, full-throated. At Eddie Christmas's church in Farmville, Virginia, there were instruments to grab in the narthex of the church. People brought their own, or you could just walk in clapping. People greeted each other outside the church because once inside, with the organ and the guitars and the choir, the focus was on connecting to the Spirit. No turn to greet your neighbors. You were embodied with God beside your neighbor, many vessels for the Spirit to enter and wake. People in the pews sang with the choir, even while seated. But if the impulse grabbed, they were apt to hop up and dance. I liked being called to come to the front of the pulpit and hold hands or shoulders while Christmas called the Lord to us. We swayed and moaned. And while I love all that, I couldn't handle the all-day Sunday school church common to the Baptist churches. And the message really wasn't one that I could connect with anymore. Not the way I connect with the prayers and poems and sermons of our Unitarian Universalist churches. I wish I could find a way to harmonize the two. I was recently gifted with a notebook of sermons from the Reverend Marilyn Sewell, and she too thought that many people in our churches were worshiping from the neck up. She said in one sermon, people want to express their faith through their whole being. They want ecstatic expression and release. They want to be filled with the fire of Spirit. She says, I can understand that. I wish we could be freer in our UU churches. Free to move, freer to say amen if we feel like it, freer to worship with our bodies as well as our minds. And she points out, I'm not ready for the rattlesnakes yet, but we need to loosen up. Indeed. I'm sure I'm just beating the point by including a quote from the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, who said that too often God is abstract and less personal, maybe more a symbol and less a felt presence, more in our heads than in our hearts. He goes on to ask, what is God really? And then he answers, the unfathomable and ineffable that is as close to your next heartbeat. I say the rhythm of God's love is always beating in our bodies. Yes, it's out there in the frog song, and it's in the streets with the songs of protests. It's in the belly of the cello on the stage in a concert hall. But when the world quiets and there is just you and your own blessed body, there it is, the connection for you alone to experience. Remember those first records or cassettes or CDs that you had? And I guess now it would be iTunes, right? I remember sitting on the floor in my room with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and that first excited shake of my wrist, dropping the needle to the vinyl, laying on the floor with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, and then listening to the chaotic beauty of the last song, Eclipse, those final lyrics with the women's voices high like siren song. All that is now, all that is gone, all that's to come, and everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon. Well, I sat up, I flipped the album over and started again. I'm sure many of you have similar recollections with music as a young person and how it got under your skin like that. I'm suggesting that whether the songs of protest or praise, lullaby or love song, the spirit can be known in our bodies when we quiet our minds and let the music roll over and through us. I'm suggesting that the shiver one feels, that the words caught behind the teeth, the pinch of the tears in our eyes is God. We can certainly cast off that moniker of God's frozen people. We have two wonderful hymn books, Singing the Living Tradition and Singing the Journey. The divine is in these pages, I'm sure of it. Singing the Spirit of Life fills me with such emotion. Our congregation used to sing Sleep, My Child as the children left for their classrooms, that beautiful lullaby repetition of all through the night. It gives a rise in my chest. But then we sang that song when migrant children were first being separated from their parents at the US borders. In writing this song in 1930, Alicia Carpenter could have no idea how the emotional impact of those lyrics shifted some 80 years later. Using the music in our hymnal that way exercises clever intentionality, inciting worshipers with longing and the need to care beyond our own children. No longer a lullaby, now a call to justice. It reminds me of McGill's intentionality when he played America the Beautiful to show us what still needs our attention. I love to think of those 6 years of gatherings in the 1987 Hymn Book Resources Commission, which gave us our current gray hymnal. They sang through the 1964 hymn book 3 times before they sought new material that reflected what our denomination needed at the time to be more multicultural, ecologically aware, more feminine, more inclusive. And it moves me deeply to consider the divine joining the commission as their hearts rose to sing, perhaps find a stillness, hold a stillness, let a stillness carry me. I love the story of the chair of that 1987 commission, Mark Bellantini, meeting with the 1964 chair, Arthur Foote. And because Foote could no longer read, he'd gone blind, Bellantini sang all of the new hymns out loud to him. How they both wept, and what a beloved hour that must have been. Of course, we have our teal hymn book, Singing the Journey. Like our doxology, I have yet to sing Blue Boat Home or Wo-Ya-Ya without tearing up. I spoke to Reverend Bill Stingford, who, while the UUA president, commissioned the 2003 task force to create that teal hymn book. Stingford pointed out that while the gray hymnal was commissioned to correct the male-dominated single divine focus and the need for more world music, the new millennial, our religion needed an update. He said there was an upsurge of composition at the time which was more enlivened and deepened. He said there were even Unitarian Universalist revivals at the district level gatherings. Revivals, now we're talking. This new hymnal needed to be something embodied with some impulsivity, Singford said. Well, amen. And this second hymnal, there's folk songs and calls and response, chants, so much to love. And who knows what we can expect from another hymnal? Most likely there won't be another printed and distributed version, perhaps something downloadable or streamable. And it's exciting to consider that there might be musicians tinkering with words right now that will become our choral assemblage. Songs that bemoan the coronavirus, like One Republic's Better Days, or those that embody Black Lives Matter, like Usher's I Cry. Or we'll reach back and find songs we overlooked 20, 50, 100 years ago. What if the combination of all those songs become our next revival? As the poet Kabar says, music penetrates our thick bodies. It goes through walls, and this tune has truth in it. The tune holds truth in my body and in yours. Whether we lie still and let the music wash over us and lick clean our muscles and our joints, or whether we will rise and let the tune bounce our bones. The truth of music is that it binds us with the stories over and over again. It connects with us the rhythms of the earth and the heart rhythms of everything alive, everything divine we want to feel connected to. Stay connected. The message I hear so often now, one that rises again from the ashes of Auschwitz, from the civil rights movement to those dying alone of coronavirus and those murdered by police. Don't turn away. Tune in. Isn't that what we mean by being in tune? In tune with nature, with our loved ones, in tune with justice and with God? The composer Sun Ra wrote in his poem, "Music is a plane of wisdom," because music is a universal language. It is a language of honor, a noble precept, a gift from the airy kingdom. We have all the music that we could ever want on our computers and also in our bodies. There is God in music, I say. Let us rise and sway and chant. Let us quiet and listen more deeply. Or let us shimmy our shoulders and shout and give thanks to this precious gift from the airy kingdom. Will you pray with me? God of many names and of no name, sweet spirit in the throats of birds, we find ourselves again in times of grief and worry. We long to walk with courage and strength and health. We long to be resonant with the struggling earth and the struggling of our human family. We need you close to us, Spirit. Please find us now with our hearts open, aching to hear your love in the arch of melody. Amen.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's join in singing a reprise of Over My Head. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
I love that song. Well, it's time to extinguish our chalices We extinguish our chalice flames, but not the light in our hearts. Friends, there is divine rhythm thrumming in us, outside us, and between us. Don't turn away from that ready love. Go in peace. Amen.
Let's sing together our unison benediction. Just believe. Just believe your star will rise in the night. The moon smiles on you. Know the sun